It was very difficult. It was very difficult to me to fit into the chaotic everyday life of the university. It was enough not to run into the thousand distractions offered by that world so badly organized and which people called inventiveness, spirit of initiative, and intellectual vivacity that was nothing but laziness, idleness, carelessness, and listlessness. I have always wondered why a course of study so important in the life of a very young adult, such as the one that would have prepared more than any other for the world of work, so often falls prey to chaos and superficiality. Not that I lacked the oppressive and sadistic atmosphere of the high school, but I also could not appreciate that loosening the bridle of the entire university academic system. The institutional clauses were belittled in favor of the monographic ones, and the latter fell back on a vain insensation of the professor on duty behind works and essays that no one would have read except for an exam that was soon forgotten. Commuting myself together with several thousand students from all over the Neapolitan province, I would have disdained a more concrete and stable point of reference. A university town like the one emerging in Salerno, for example, or a campus based on an American model that would at least have catalyzed the attention of the students on the parent structures of their course of study. The Federico II of Naples, as far as I knew of it, was lost in the city. It was swallowed up by city traffic, by the impending precariousness of structures so impersonal, by the laxity of the teachers themselves, who by now lived addicted to that secular immobility. I wandered through the streets, crowded with uncouth and stranger faces, and in the meantime I imagined the white tree-lined avenues, the large and silent libraries, the green groves, and decorative gardens, typical of the American college they saw on TV. How much commitment, how much confidence of students under undergraduates could we recover in better organized structures, albeit dislocated with respect to the fulcrum of city life, studying its concentration and focus, a campus of resident students perpetually close to each other in order to strengthen the friendships and comparison, could have changed my own life. Instead, I was left alone wandering through those dilapidated and always deserted corridors after the traffic of the morning classes. I ran from one neighborhood to another at every change of hour to reach a dislocated class or department, and often I could not even manage to take a breath before having to leave again. The boys got lost in the pizzerias and cafes of Corso Umberto after the classrooms were empty or not very busy because there was no obligation to attend the classes. The courses. On the exam date, we saw ugly thugs who didn't set foot in the faculty except to get a pass on the exam. When I had resigned myself to making the degree course in languages, my trump card for the future I longed for, I hadn't even thought about the reasons that had pushed the other students almost all girls from the linguistic high school to choose that particular one branch of studies. They were almost always aspiring hostesses and language teachers or globe-trotting boys with a bit of gypsy, a bit of hippie look. In short, nothing in common with my passion for literature and the comparison between international cultures. One can well understand why in that superficial and nice-spirited environment I was seen as little less than an alien. Already my clothing clashed with that of others. I never wore jeans. I wore the vests and shirts that I had dragged around since high school, and I would never have dared to wear sports shoes. The other looked at me with interest or sympathy, obviously without ever targeting or bullying me. It can be said that in my life I always roused such interest that it never or almost never resulted in derision. I imagined that I was going back into the shoes of a sui generis character, a sort of studio machine that was those who didn't understand him and always showed himself cultures if it very rarely someone went so far as to speak to me. My shell was by now formed and unassailable. Only thanks to Sabrina did I have the opportunity to meet some of the girls who was our classmate. One of these was Roberta, who lived in our same country and attended the second year's courses. She immediately took a liking to me for my quick wit and the brilliant results of my first language exams, and she never had a problem taking advantage of my notes to prepare the most important tests. For my part, I would never have dreamed of making a disgrace to the very few people who supported me in that solitary, demanding adventure in the outside world. There was also no lack of discrimination in the critical judgment, of course. Many thought I was snobbish or so, simply because I worked with my head down without grading anyone. Once, while I was reading alone in the corridor, a girl stopped past me in a malicious tone, and addressing her classmate said, I don't understand why there are people in the woods as useless as this one, referring to me. I pretended not to pay attention. I had never seen that critic before, and for a long time I wondered what she meant by that statement. I tried to look at myself from the outside. Sure, a guy who spends all his time reading, taking notes and moving from one course to another without socializing with anyone can seem a really boring or singular human specimen. But from here to asserting that it might not even exist, so much was its uselessness, it passed us so right. I added another notch to my already skyrocketing pride and strengthened my shield with yet another protective shell. I studied until I completely isolated myself in deserted landings, libraries, and little frequented corners so as to always fall within the time limits set by the exams in order not to end up out of course. The few girls I knew said they were proud of me. I still believe they were sincere and that I could really continue to represent the modest students that I have been in art school. Thank you for listening. See you in the next video.